We'll begin the session. Just a quick introduction. For those of you who don't know me that joining, my name's Jonathan Jeffries. Most people in market know me as JJ. I'm the co-founder of Think&Grow alongside my co-host today, Anthony Sochan. We're going to split the session up into two sort of 10 to 15 minute pieces that we'll really run through, I guess, our view on what you need to be thinking about as individuals, and how you're going to go about, if you're at that stage where you're kind of at a roadblock, rethinking about your career. If you're not, and you're just here to kind of listen and learn about your career, the same exercise that we'll run through will hopefully enable you to have a really good think about what you should be doing to reach your personal and career and work goals all in one fell swoop. So without further ado, I'll kick off the session and begin. For those of you that have got the time or around you have got a piece of paper and a pen, it's going to be a really good way to make the session more interactive. And I'd encourage you, if you haven't, to certainly pick up a pen and a bit of paper. And this will work for anyone that's unemployed, currently forlorn or stood down, anyone looking for a new position, and anyone looking for a promotion or a reposition post what's happening with the crisis. So for those that haven't got a bit of paper, don't worry, we can send through the exercise post, but it's really good to run through this live with you. What I'll get you to do is draw a circle that resembles a pie. Here's my drawing of a pie, for those of you who can't see it. And what I'd like you to do is look at the pie and think about your current role, your previous role if you're no longer working, and think about a chunk of the last 3 months of that job. And what I'd like you to think about as part of this self-reflection period is split that pie into chunks of work that you were doing. So for me, one of my quadrants is sales. For me, one of my quadrants is management of the team. So 50% of my life is spent in 25%, 25% sales, 25% management of the team. And so what I'd like you to do is just go through that exercise over the next couple of minutes and start to kind of wheelhouse up, what you have really been spending your time doing over the last 3 to 6 months, depending on your employment state. What I'm going to do, because the amount of people that have joined, is I'm just going to unmute you. And as you go through the exercise, I'm going to allow you to obviously ask questions, because there's enough of you where we can have a much more interactive session to really help you through this exercise, and then start to talk about why it's important to go through this exercise and move forward. So you should all be able and permitted to talk. Feel free to move on to mute if you've got background noise like I have, kids, dogs, whatnot. But feel free to put your hand up and ask a question as we go through this. So I'm going to keep on going, but feel free to ask questions as we go. I'm going to fill out my wheelhouse now to complete my part of the exercise. All right, so I'm just going to try and show you mine. In essence, what you've got is 25% sales, management of team, 10% admin, 15% delivery, 10% in meeting talent on a weekly basis, and then 50% on the vision leadership component of what we do. And that provides the wheelhouse of activities that I spend my time on. Is everyone completed that? So for those of you on mute, please come off mute and just say yes. For those of you still working through it, feel free to let us know to slow down.
Yep.
Good.
Yep.
Humphrey, good.
Yep. All good for me.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Tony and Eugenia. Eugenia, you good?
Yeah, I'm good. I already said that. Sorry.
Great. All good. Thank you. So what I'd like you to do now is write down the 3 skills that you're awesome at. It's a max of 3. For some, people are just elite at sales and they can go through a whole career just being elite at sales. So I really want you to kind of try and iron out what is the thing that everyone that has ever met you would say you're elite at as a skill and you think you are elite at. And it is in your own context, in your own work that you do. But there are some people out there that purely get through life on one skill. I'm not saying that's all of you guys, but max of 3 is why we hold you to it. And so as you're writing those down, sometimes that can be a challenging question and you can ponder on it a little bit. The idea of doing this is for you all individually and us as a... Hey, Shez, I'm going to allow you to talk and join in when you need to, okay? Thanks for joining. The reason we do this is when we think about us as skills and we start to express who we are in our own words, what we've got to try and create for you all as you go through this career transition or this career growth is making sure that those words make sense to others. And so what we're trying to do is ensure that the words that you're using as core skills really reflect on what you have as a background and what you need to and want to go and get in your career moving forward. And that can be really challenging if in the current environment that you're in, they use generic words that don't really mean anything. And they're not clear with what your role responsibility is. And one of the classic examples of that in the tech world is product. If I walked on the street today and asked 10 people what's the role of a product manager, I'd get 10 completely different answers. And so what can happen in your careers as individuals is we can obviously have core skills, and those core skills can be drawn out of you by being promoted, by working in an early stage business where you're kind of asked to do more than your core skill set and you're very happy as giving people to just chip in. And that pulls you further and further away from your core skill, and you spend more and more time on skills that are less relevant to your core goals in life, to your core skills. And we end up in a reflection point where hypothetically we're a salesperson that's been asked to do sales, account management, customer service, customer success, because it's an early stage business. And now we own end-to-end cycle in a business. And that makes us challenging for us to rehire as individuals, because we've been drawn into areas of expertise that aren't in your core repertoire. So for those of you, perhaps I'm not going to pick on anyone that I don't know very well, but I'm going to ask one individual to just give me the 3 skills they've written down. So Kylie, I'll unmute you. Are you okay if we do that with you?
Yeah, that's fine. So I had developing and leading a remote team.
Yes.
Strategically partnering to create value, and developing and executing growth strategies.
And execute. Awesome. Thank you. So, Kylie, just quickly, what would you say of those 3 skills is in market the right role for you?
Usually a growth leader, so either in sales and marketing. So
yeah.
Scaling a growth company.
Thank you. So for Kylie, for those who don't know Kylie Neal, like she's worked across basically that sort of quasi sales and marketing function where her responsibility has always been to sit near the founder or an MD, and basically drive strategy, execution of strategy across sales and marketing for small businesses in Australia that are scaling, you know, at a rapid phase scale. So what she's provided as a core skills are obviously developing and leading a remote team. Apologies. Strategic partnership value and development and execution of that strategic plan. And so if we look at that as a bench of the 3 core skills, what perhaps to challenge Kylie, one of the challenging things for her would be if I just said those 3 things naturally, you wouldn't think to put Kylie straight in as a director of sales and marketing, because traditional recruiters wouldn't look at those 3 points and go, oh, she'd be perfect for a country manager, or she'd be perfect for a GM of sales and marketing, because the way Kylie describes herself isn't common language unless you work in early stage startup, or isn't common language unless you move up the food chain and into a core, more corporate role. And that's because the way Kylie articulates herself is in her way, which is very personable, very hands-on. She's a very hands-on leader, very caring of her staff, very caring of the product that she looks after. And so what we're looking at with Kylie here is a really good example of 3 excellent pillars, but they don't necessarily direct her in the right path to be able to clinically get the role she should get against a core proven track record. And actually, unfortunately, sometimes she's not seen perhaps at the level she should be. So instead of being able to get the first in country manager role or the director of sales and marketing role, quite often she can be mistaken for the role beneath it, even though she's actually normally the role above it. And that's not to disrespect Kylie in any way. She always does her job and gets up there and works very closely with the founders. But if she was to enter a traditional process today, that would be one of her challenges. Now, without picking on Kylie anymore, the idea is to try and get you guys to think about this for the Q&A. And what I'll do as we start this context is then move across to Anthony, who will talk to you about the importance of why we go through this process in more detail. And we'll also encourage you, for those who would like to spend some more time with us in thinking about your career, to fill out a form that allows this in a lot more detail to kind of be moved through with us personally around our career coaching platform. But I'll move over to Ant, and then we'll circle back in 15 minutes time for some Q&A to talk through these examples in a bit more detail.
Cool. Thanks, JJ. Look, what I wanted to start off by talking about is just one of the biggest frustrations that we often find people have in market when looking for a new opportunity. So one of the big issues is you jump on Seek, you jump on LinkedIn, you maybe talk to a recruiter or someone who's representing an opportunity in market, and they've got this kind of list of different requirements that they need in order for you to do the job. And those requirements are things like you must have been, a COO for 4 years. You must have studied this degree. You must have done this. You must have done that. And our view is that's a completely irrational way of thinking about people's careers, because just because someone has done something before, it does not mean they're going to be the best person at doing that again in the future. And so one of the frustrations we normally get, particularly from people from overseas markets, is that Australian recruitment is more often than not, unfortunately, a box ticking exercise. So the idea of this method is to really draw out what are you great at as a person. So you focus on skills. And secondly, you're then starting to think about how you pitch those skills in market. And one of the things that we find most important is that you're able to clearly articulate those skills with some form of measurable outcome. So for the next part of the exercise, what I'd like you to do is take those 3 skills that you've written down and jot next to it an example of an outcome you've helped to drive that fits in with that particular skill. So for example, Kylie was saying, Kylie, just going back to you, JJ, you might need to unmute Kylie. Kylie, could you remind me of your skills again?
Developing and leading the team, strategically partnering to create value, and developing and executing growth strategies.
Cool. If we take the last one, developing and executing growth strategies, and sorry to put you on the spot, could you maybe think of a time when you've implemented and developed a growth strategy, and then talk us through what the result of that was?
Yep. So one of those times is to grow the third-party banking market in New Zealand, and with that to redesign the commission models for 1,000 brokers in New Zealand, and redevelop the product, the customer value proposition. And that achieved a $20 million increase in the lending book, which was about a 30% growth in 12 months.
Fantastic. That's a fantastic example. So what makes that a really strong example is, and the reason why I picked the growth piece was, it's easy to measure, I guess, success in the form of revenue, because particularly for the executives here, more often than not, you will be pitching to other senior executives, you'll be pitching or interviewing with a CEO or a board. And at the end of the day, businesses live or die by their ability to grow revenue. And so, but what I want to emphasize is that not everything is about revenue, and that success comes in many different forms, and that we need to be thinking about success a lot broader than that, from anything from people you may have hired and the organizational value they may have brought from a cultural point of view, right through to something that you may have done that's helped to keep a business compliant from a market point of view, which means they don't lose revenue. So don't just think about top line revenue growth, but think about success in the form of, I guess, a way of measurement that's simple to communicate and easy for other people to understand. What's really important about these things is that you can communicate your skills and the examples of what you're great at in a simple enough format that someone who does not know you or does not have a huge amount of understanding of the industry that you've worked in is able to recognize the value that you bring. And the reason why that's important, if we look at the majority of people you would be interfacing with as a first point of contact, it's more often than not someone in people and culture, sometimes a recruiter, and most of those people are generalists and not specialists. And so part of your role is to educate and inform them of the great things that you've done. And that means simplicity is more important for those initial conversations. What we also recommend is trying this out by pitching these skills and pitching these examples to 3 different people in your immediate network. And the reason why we choose these 3 people is that it can be done quickly to get feedback on how you're pitching. The first we recommend is spouse, if you have one. If not, maybe a best friend, but someone that knows you intimately very well, because they'll be able to see and resonate with the human side of things. The next is actually a former boss or a current boss, if you can, because they will recognize and see things from a commercial and value point of view. And then the third is actually a former colleague or co-worker. So ideally someone on the same reporting line as yourself, because again, they will view the world in a different way. And you'll find that the feedback from all three will be a little bit different, but it will inform you in how you pitch in the future. And that's what we're wanting to get down. We're wanting to really make it so that as you're going in and you're talking to a wide variety of stakeholders in either an interview process or even just as a meet and greet, that you're able to vary your pitching style based on some of the feedback that you've already had. What we, in these kind of challenging markets, what we're acutely aware of is that what's going to happen is the jobs online will effectively get swamped with applicants, not in all categories, but in quite a number. And so those publicly available jobs, will get hundreds of people applying. Now that's very, very difficult to stand out from the crowd in that sort of competitive process. And so what we normally recommend is you need a leg into an organization in order to be recognized. Now, how you do that is obviously one way is through recruiters like us. We can provide some assistance there, but another way is through your network. And one of the things that people don't always do is activate their networks properly during a job searching process. And one of the biggest failings is not setting a cadence to how you activate that network. And what I mean by that is you need to set yourself a goal of the number of people week on week you're going to talk to and pitch yourself to. If you're thinking, how do I find those people in the first place? Well, you start with one person that you might know, a colleague, a former boss, and you're just talking to them. You're asking them what's going on in market. You're finding out, what opportunities there might be. If they've heard anything, you're asking them if there's anyone that they can recommend you talk to help you in your job search. So what we're doing is we're setting a pace at which you're looking. And in an ideal world, you're doing a minimum of one of these every day. So you're doing a minimum of 5 a week, so that over a month's period, you've now spoken to 20 people. And you're just continuing that. And you'll find that over the course of 1 or 2 months, you'll start to gain traction because you will start to cover the market. And if you feel like you're then at the end, you rinse and repeat and you go back to the top of the list and go again, because it would have been then 3 to 4 months since you would have spoken to that person that you spoke to at the start. And that's what you need to do in markets like this. JJ, did you have some additional points to add there?
Yeah, I was just going to loop on the back of that. And so looping back around to the initial points I talked about around the 3 skills and then what you're actually up and doing now. What we find with executives, CEOs, day-to-day workers is their skills and what they're doing in their day job don't necessarily match. Hopefully it's not as far-fetched as being 50% of an unmatch. In some instances, especially in early stage businesses, certainly the exec team can be an 80-20 the wrong way. 20% on the skills they have, 80% on the things they don't. And that can bleed into people that are working for founders who are built that way. So just wanted to sort of full circle on that. To Ant's points, for me, the most important point for all of you guys to take into consideration is Ant's description and getting feedback on who you are. And that's based on a skill basis and your track record, as he mentioned. And that couldn't be more valid. And I'll give you a live example of someone I'm career coaching at the moment. It's a bit of a broader story so you can kind of get a feel and hopefully it resonates with you all. What I'll do is I'll unmute everyone as well while I'm doing this so that once I've finished the story, we can go into a bit of a Q&A, and no question is a dumb question in helping everyone develop their career further. So feel free to add in. In essence, I've known this female for about 15 years, super experienced exec, has worked in digital transformation at the top ASX top 20, has worked for very successful global SaaS businesses. In between those two roles, has had a kid, and then in the second role has had another kid. And she really hit a bit of a roadblock in life, where she developed through the digital transformation in a variety of different roles, moving away from a core skill set of sales and marketing and into product, digital transformation, partnerships, stakeholder management, and built all the way up to just below the chief digital officer. Then moved into a very well-known SaaS brand for small business, where she developed into a product leader despite having a core sales and marketing background, and then was taken on by the founder to do some global partnership initiatives, again moving her into a different spiral. And so at the end of that, plus a couple of kids, she's now at that point where she's like, well, what am I now? 10 years in, I'm earning good bucks, but I'm not happy. I've got a skill set that's spread across 10 different areas. I'm a good leader of people. I'm a good salesperson. I'm a good deliverer of projects. I'm great at key stakeholder management. I love the product side of things. I can run a P&L. And it's really that sense check for a lot of individuals where that has developed. And I know a few of you quite well. And for some of those that I know quite well on the call, it's a very, very common problem. We love the founder, we love the business, we love the idea, and it draws us into areas that we're not as competent on, but more competent than the founder at delivering, and we just get on and deliver. And so in taking stock of that, I encourage you all to really do the exercise Ant suggested and ask people around you, who do they see you as skills? Relay that back to the skills you've laid out today. Relay that back into the wheelhouse that we've asked you to do. And if you do want to have a further chat with us post this call, we're more than happy to spend time getting you to do the more in-depth task, and then spending time to get to know you better again. And for those that I know already, more than happy to do that for all of you. And you can reach out to me directly and we can book in a time. But what I'll do at this point is really open it up to you guys that are out there and see what questions you have that may personally help other people along their journey on this call, and hopefully help you in answering the question either by myself or Ant or others that are on the call. It's a totally open forum now, guys. You're all open to speak.
I think a few people might be muted still, JJ.
Oh, that's up to them.
Oh, okay, got it.
I've unmuted them, but I can unmute everyone again, but they might have background noise, you see.
Yeah.
Hey guys, it's Humphrey. Hey JJ.
Hey Humphrey, good to see you.
How's it going?
Hey mate.
Hey mate. Thanks for running this session. I had a good chat with Anthony a week or two ago. It really helped as well. But this was also really valuable. I guess my question, going back to the skills and the exercise of, I guess, summarizing it in a nice simplistic way so it's easy to communicate, which I totally agree with. What if some of those skills are around performance of teams, improvement of that alignment to goals and strategy, so more maybe people management, where you don't have that hard metric of, hey, I'll give you an example. There was a group I was coaching, 5 or 6 teams, each building their own sort of types of products, but had to come together, and they were all misaligned. They weren't actually driving what the leadership wanted or what the leadership had asked. But there was a lack of leadership there as well. So there was mass confusion between the head of products and the teams actually executing on the ground. So by putting in some tasks of getting that alignment, getting into size and shape their work and understand their prioritization versus the organizations, we've got much better alignment, and we're able to have workshops to drive that benefit. So at the end, you could look at it as capacity, utilization, direction, but you can't actually drive it to a specific dollar. How would you simplistically describe that?
Not everything's about a dollar, Humphrey. Hopefully that will please you to know, and everyone else on the call. People leadership and getting the best out of people is very much a skill set. Not everyone likes managing people, and not everyone's got the listening capacity to interpret what's going wrong with the people. And in your instance, the case is that the people were misaligned to what the task was against the business strategy. So people were basically treading water, right? To be able to pull back from that and look at the basic skill that sits against that topic. So you can have people leadership, you can have people management, you can have one-on-one management, and these are all skills and traits of a leader or a people manager. And what you've got to work out is which of those skills it is that you really have. And then think about, am I better at actually key stakeholder management and bringing those people together? Am I better, or is my core skill actually communication? Because what I'm actually really good at doing is communicating to people generally. And then what they're able to hear in a very concise manner is a clear articulation of the business strategy from communication style that allows them to come on board the journey with me. And then I clearly communicate the KPIs and the measures, and then they're able to deliver against it. Now, without me being in the room with you, and this is why we ask that exercise of asking people around you to see if there's a pattern of, well, Humphrey, we see you as a very good communicator. Or Humphrey, we see you as a very good leader of people because you do listen, you do care, you take them aside and make sure they do understand that. Or we see you as a very good stakeholder manager because you're able to listen to the people to the side of you, below you, above you, and in the other business units, and piece together a plan of action. Now, you could be good or great at all of those things, but they would tend to be underpinned by either the skill of communication or the skill of key stakeholder management or the skill of people management or leadership, depending on you're a one-on-one manager or you're a visionary. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So let's say the communicator one that's come up in the past. So if I took an action that improves the communication and alignment between the strategy team and and the execution teams,
yes,
is that a good enough example or metric? Like how do I phrase that in such a way that it doesn't sound overly convoluted? But
look, communication as a whole is missing in most businesses, and most businesses need like a piece of glue that stitches it together. In a traditional format in technology, that can be a program lead, that can be a scrum master, that can be an agile coach, or a product manager, product owner. Yeah, they're often the people that stitch the organizations together. So I would never ever say of anyone that that's not a good enough skill. It's actually making sure the words you use best represent the outcomes you've achieved. And that when you use the skill of communication, you clearly articulate what you mean by that. And then you have tangible examples behind that, back up that. And we can definitely help you with that and make more sense to the external world for you, for sure.
Yeah, cool. Thanks. That was good. Thanks, guys.
Anyone else out there that would like to open up who they are and where they might need help?
Hi, it's Cheyenne here. I guess I have a question for Anthony. I've been on the networking front for a little while now. My role, as JJ knows, was made redundant VP, as I'm calling it, before pandemic in about February. And so in terms of, I guess, the challenge when you are the candidate looking is you're sending the emails out to the networking opportunities, and how long do you wait until you follow up? Because obviously you're the one that's waiting, and
Yes.
and their life is going on, and I'm looking at getting into the tech world in a sales capacity, and tech is booming right now. And so I guess one tiny piece of advice I wanted to give to everyone else is sometimes when you least expect it, people do get back to you. But I just wanted to know, Anthony, how would you go about following up with somebody? If I sent someone an email, for instance, in March, and they hadn't gotten back to me in April, so I sent up a follow-up. But how long would you generally say to give and those sort of things? And I feel like at the moment now people are starting to get back to me.
Yes.
But
yes. So I think what we've all got to be very appreciative is that March for most people, even ourselves included, was a pretty chaotic period of time. Kids were at home, and you were moving from working in offices to remote working, and so a lot of the emails that you may have sent out for that entire period could have actually fallen by the wayside. So in normal business circumstances, we would suggest waiting no longer than a week. So if someone has not come back to you within a week, follow up, and don't feel afraid to do a bit of, almost shame them a little bit into replying, guilt trip them a bit in the email. It's okay. People get it. The problem if you wait more than a week is I'm the worst at, clearing out my inbox. I have 10,000 unread emails over about a 4-year period. And I am now at the point where I take the approach of, well, if it was really important, someone's going to get in touch with me again and follow up with either a call or an email. And that's not because I don't value the emails that people send. It's literally by the end of the day, I haven't cleared out my inbox. And if I haven't done it, I'm going to go to bed at night and I'll wake up in the morning. And if there's, the new batch of emails might be in, and so the ones from the previous day might not get replied to. So
I'd just add to that for everyone, as soon as you've had a meeting with someone, really good etiquette for you all to get used to is emailing them straight after with the points that were discussed, because then that leads into a much earlier follow-up. If you then just go, hey, great to meet you, shake hand, high five, bye, thanks for the coffee, and then follow up in 2 weeks' time or a week's time, it's not as meaningful as actually getting home that night or getting home that afternoon. Hey, great to meet you. These are the things we discussed. Really look forward to following up. Thanks for offering to catch up again in a couple of weeks. And that's kind of like, like the old fashioned sales technique. It's the best way of keeping that dialogue open and really outlining what you took from the meeting, so that if they've forgotten, hopefully not forgotten who you are, but if they've forgotten what happened in the meeting, they can really see that. Humphrey, hand up. Go, man.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt quickly, Gregor. I was just giving you time. Sorry, is that answered? I didn't want to jump in there.
Yeah. I was just about finishing up, which is why I can move straight to your hand up.
I'll just add one more quick point there. Just to illustrate this, I've done a little bit of traveling in the US and done a little bit of working in San Francisco in particular. But what blew me away there the first time I went was you'd be in a meeting with someone, and most people there are Americans. And by the end of the meeting, they're thinking about who they can introduce you to or connect you with. And when you're in the taxi or, on the train out to the valley to get back to the city or whatever, they have already actioned the introduction that they said you were going to do. So if we're going to San Francisco, we might spend 2 weeks there. The first week we'll have meetings booked in because we know for week 2, the first week's meetings will create the second week's worth of meetings. And I guess culturally, we're not very good at this in Australia. We're just a little bit lax. But if you set a pace and set a cadence around follow up and setting a level of ownership and accountability around it, you'll find people will start to follow your lead. Yeah, I agree with that. And this is the same point for you guys to try and train into yourselves, right? You just got to do it now. We're all drifters in life normally. And if you don't action on the things from that meeting for your own sake, and this is where we're really looking at you as individuals to own yourself. And that's by understanding your skills better, starting to better articulate and communicate and recognize who you are. And then on top of that, do the relevant follow-ups. But there's a much deeper level of training that we can go into you individually on this around even the questions you should be asking in these sessions. But Cheyenne, sorry, you've got a hand up. Please feel free to add in. And
yeah, I was just going to say, I've also found it valuable in terms of around getting some advice around their CVs and resumes, and everyone's got a very differing opinion, but generally by the end of always going into the networking opportunities as a networking opportunity, not I need a job desperately. And I found certainly using that technique people are actually, I find the same. Actually, I've worked with American companies and people, I just cannot believe after a simple thank you message and attaches my CV as discussed, would love some feedback, welcome feedback, those sort of things. They've come back to me and said, hey, a friend works here, I'll introduce you, or I'd love to, whenever you see a job come up, I'd love to put you in front of HR. And just a simple, like, thank you so much, I really appreciate it, goes so far with people. And that's the feedback that I've received, that I want to put you because you're appreciative of my time. If I've got 30 minutes, I always check in with them as well at that 20-minute mark to make sure I'm not going over their time and all that sort of thing. So
look, it's a good point. Really good point. And what I add to all of you here is people genuinely like to help other people. Just here in Australia, people aren't willing to sort of ask or help themselves to get other people to help themselves, if you like. And the simple things you can do, which we're trying to outline here, are: one, understanding who you are, firstly; secondly, being proactive to connect with people; thirdly, following up with people around what the subject matter was. And just the courtesy of doing that tends to lead to more success for you as individuals. And Australians are very happy to have a coffee or a beer with you, but if you follow up in the right way with the right context on the points that were said, they're just as likely to help out as Americans. It might not happen in the 10 minutes after the meeting, but it will certainly happen within the next 24 hours. And I can advocate for that, having landed here 13 years ago and said, look, I don't know anyone. I'm trying to get to know people in the technology industry. Anyone you know, feel free to introduce me. And lo and behold, 7,000 connections later, I know a little bit about technology. So it can happen. You just have to be really confident in who you are and people's willingness to want to help you if you're able to articulate what that looks like. Now, probably time for one last question before all hell breaks loose on Zoom and it crashes because we're out of time scope. So anyone else want to shoot something across?
Just related to that, JJ. So my question was, I'm very quite focused on which 5 to maybe 8 companies I'd like to work for in Melbourne.
Yeah.
So should I be targeting maybe those LinkedIn coffees or catch-ups in the role I know I can get, or the role I know I would like to be in? So if these are the people that I don't quite know, and obviously they'll be busier, like directors of products or head of products. When I know I could get a senior product role, but I actually want the head of product role. So and when I'm catching up with them, is that instigation, look, I'm just looking for advice and get some feedback of how it works within your organization and la la la. Yeah. How do you reckon I approach that?
And do you want to go first, and I'll finish off?
So just to reframe the question, it was, should you be talking to people that for the role you can get versus the role that you want? That was who should you be talking to?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, cool. So it's all, so what we're kind of talking about here is, I guess, potentially a little bit of a career pivot, in that there's probably a role out there that you really want. You have done, I guess, that role before, or parts of the role before, but you may or may not be able to pitch yourself as strong as other candidates in market, potentially on paper. And so what I'd always say there is, just bite the bullet and start positioning yourself for the role that you want. And it will take longer. And look, it is what it is. Be comfortable that you might be on the sidelines, a little bit longer than what you normally would. Be comfortable that you might have to have double the number of catch-up meetings with people before you get traction. That's totally okay. But don't get dissuaded by the amount of effort that needs to go in. Just keep on persisting, and you're going to get there.
And Humphrey, I'd add to that, to your point specifically, right? So you've got 8 target customers, target companies you'd like to work for. You want to get the senior role, or the head of role, and you can easily get the same role. For me, it's kind of like BD. So back in the old days, and I'll just use a user case story here for when I first landed in Australia, working in technology. Telstra was one of the accounts that I was handed. So I used to sit at the Sofitel every single Monday, the entire Monday, and drink cups of tea, because I knew I would see every single person that I needed to speak to come for a coffee in the Sofitel lobby at some point during that day. So the same way, hypothetically, at Zendesk in Melbourne or someone like that, you sit in their building, you organise meetings, you meet everyone, get referred to everyone else. You do meet everyone on there to understand how good are the heads of the product, what makes them right for Zendesk, what doesn't make them right. Are there any synergies with their value sets, with their skill sets, with their backgrounds that make them a better fit for a head of a product versus a senior product role? And so once you've been able to kind of work, I guess, the domino effect out, you're then able to go, okay, great. Now everyone knows me. Now I understand the lay of the land. I know whether that company's right or wrong for me. I know if the salary's right or wrong for me. And I know why I wouldn't get the job or why I would. But then I can position in with either the country lead, the recruiter, ask the peer of that role to refer me to the next time that the head of rolls up. Ask one of the other head ofs to say, look, that Humphrey's a really good guy. We should position him as the next head of product. Is there a quasi role he can sit in between before the next one comes up, with a promise that you'll get the role? So doing your due diligence, your research that way, and meeting as many people as you can in an organization is a very smart way of doing it if they're open for the coffee. If it's a small organization and there is only one head of product and you want their role, that's a very different prospect. And that's probably one for offline. There are ways to kind of talk about that if you know that that person is not capable in the role and holding the org back, and the founder knows that as well. That there's ways to kind of maneuver in and around that to make sure that you're doing the right thing by them who may be just out of their depth in a role, and by the company and the founder that you know. So I'm happy to share that. I would definitely do the meetups.
So just to clarify, let's say it's an organization, they've got 5 or 6 head ofs, they've got a VP of product, they've got a number of senior products underneath each. And say I don't have any warm leads into that org. Who do I target for coffee? Do I target a couple of the head ofs, a couple of the senior products?
Yep. I would go from the lowest product person to the highest. So you understand how they see product. And so for argument's sake, they've got 25 people in product functions.
Yeah.
You know, 1 big dog, 5 just below the big dog, 10 beneath that, and further 15 underneath that. You want to see how the layers work, and you need to try and understand that as best you can to understand where you fit in, both on an experience viewpoint, but then what they really own in the product cycle.
Yeah. And so my reason for meeting is just to learn more about the business, just to have a catch up.
Yes.
Totally. And then what you work out is, do I really even want to be a product person in that way? You know, is head of product in that company the right role for me? Because it might not give you the full P&L you want to own, or it might not give you the same leadership responsibility. Because product like sales are the 2 most complex organizations within an organization, as in the vertical, or the function, I should say, is the most complex, because titles just mean nothing. It's actually what role responsibility is day to day and what the ROIs are in each of those roles.
Fair enough. Thanks, man.
No worries. I'm happy to chat this week, Humphrey. So book in a time.
Sweet. We'll do.
Shan?
I was just going to add, just on Humphrey's point, I found it actually is really great to connect with people now, because you really understand how a business is coping during quite a lot of change. And I think real leaders will be defined in this time. And so what I've found is I've connected with people, and I'm like, and that actually said it's actually not a great organization. And because you're not going with them like a job, their guard is actually down, and they're like, you know what, there are only certain parts of this business that you would actually want to work for, because honestly, that leader during this period has just been totally horrible or whatever. So I've actually found it really good. There are lots of companies that I've either gone in thinking, oh my God, that would be a dream. And then I've walked away going, wow, I'm so glad I didn't get the interview pitch of how great this company is, not the reality.
For sure, for sure. And it's funny how it works that way around. People do have more time. People are very happy to catch up with people right now. So if in preparation for getting the role you really want in the future, a really good time to self-reflect on yourself, work out, what it is that you're highly skilled at, what it is that you're really motivated to do in your next role. And the cleaner you get at that with the feedback we've provided around your partner or someone very close to you, your former peer, your former boss, and then other people that know you. And the deeper you can go on that and see the synergies in the messaging, and then group those together as words in clusters, and then work out what is the skill beneath all of those things someone is saying at me, the better you become in actually getting the right job. And one of the things we go into on our sort of longer term career coaching piece is the building of the 15 questions you need personally to get the right job for you. And interviewing in Australia is more than it is in the US and the UK, unfortunately, is much more of a one-way interview process. So we need to kind of force and train our candidates and the people with career coach to have a much better set of weapons, both in terms of how you explain who you are, but actually the questions you need to understand about a company, to understand the value set, the way the role responsibility really works, what is day-to-day work look like. And those questions are unique to you as a human, because you've got different words you use, different values each, and different directions you're trying to move in as a career. And the thing that most people get wrong is they just say yes, they get interviewed, they enjoy the experience, and they're like, yeah, this sounds like a great job, let's get in there. And more often than not, because they haven't interviewed back and asked their key questions, and the funniest example I'll give you to sort of sign off on today was a chap who we placed in a product role, and he called me week 2. I'm really not enjoying this, JJ, really not enjoying it. I'm like, why not? What's going on? It's a funny one, actually. They don't have any showers. I was like, sorry? What do you mean they don't have any showers? Yeah, there's no showers. I ride my bike in every day and the business hasn't got any showers, and I ride my bike in every day, so now I've got to sit there sweating at my desk every day. And I'm like, okay. And this is like 10 years ago. And I'm like, well, I really didn't realize that would be a problem. Perhaps that was something that you should have asked as a question before you joined the company. Do you have showers if you cycle in every day? And of course, coming from London at the time, 13 odd years ago, people didn't cycle into London because they would clearly die, because that was pre-congestion charge. And for me, kind of getting used to Australian culture, I realized that was a critical thing to prepare candidates for, and my clients, which is, what are all the facilities that you've got for this more outdoor life, for people running in, cycling in, not commuting in as much as they did in London. So it's the smallest details that people misinterpret about themselves that end up being the most important points as to why you enjoy or don't enjoy a job. And we've really got to prepare you to make sure you ask those to the nth degree to secure the right role for you in the right company with the right career development set. So probably a good way to sign off, as we've overrun a bit on everyone's time, but we would love for anyone that wants help for you to sign up to, the career coaching piece that we're offering as a free sort of coaching service during these times. And further on from that, for anyone that wants to sign up into a more, longer program, it's something that we've offered for years and really have kind of started to appropriately productize on our website for the first time, but happy to support any of you in doing that moving forward. So thanks for taking the time to join us. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we say goodbye, Ant?
No, that's it. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your time, and don't feel afraid to reach out or connect.
See you guys.